I grew up in a household where at times there was domestic violence between my parents. Sometimes conflict would quickly escalate with my mother, who had the strongest personality, and shit, man, before you know it, there'd be a shoving match, or there'd be a fist fight, or sometimes there would even be gunplay. As a kid, what I really wanted was order, and I wanted my father to assert himself and assert his presence as a man to the end of bringing peace to the house. But instead, sometimes he'd go off to another room or he'll take a drive somewhere until, things blew over. I perceived that as him losing the argument or being the weaker of the parents. And I'm not ashamed to say that that was my youthful ignorance and inexperience speaking in matters of romance or whatever. I was dead wrong in some of those cases. And what I didn't understand was that sometimes it takes strength and discipline to, fight your instincts to the end of providing for a family and in maintaining continued stability for the family unit itself, which brings me to this ongoing discussion about masculinity and really essentially what it means to be a man. So if you're talking about a traditional definition of a man, you visualize a leader, a protector, a provider, attributes that seem to work in cases where a family's physical safety is in jeopardy, or where food and or housing is needed, or perhaps, brainstorming the general direction a family's energy should be directed. But I think a lot more feeds into the idea of manhood, and arguably it may be time to let go of some of these outdated qualities that just don't serve us. I do think this is something that each and every man should decide on his own, not women. And sure, women can have an opinion on the matter, but shouldn't have a say on what manhood is, just as us men shouldn't have a say on what it means to be a woman or defining them. And I also think we have to account for the changing times, which I'll get into shortly. So to me, being a man doesn't mean imposing your will at all costs. Might isn't always right. While might may be a circumstance where a man has more influence, wealth, or a stronger personality, it doesn't always mean you have the moral or intellectual high ground. For instance, if I got married, physically, chances are I'm going to be, the bigger, stronger, faster of the couple right off the bat, unless I decide to wed an orangutan or some charming silverback gorilla. I may be a stronger earner financially than my female mate. But if she demonstrates that she is better at managing finances and is willing to accept that isolated responsibility, I'm going to defer to her, and I'm going to suggest that she leads the way on that, and perhaps I take on some other task in the household so she isn't overwhelmed with too much responsibility. And I know I can be an egomaniac about it and insist that I do it, but it could very well come at the cost of us losing out on some unnamed financial opportunities. I would tell my ego to fuck off, because good leaders know how to delegate and to trust the people around them. So moving along, as men, I think we should also allow ourselves to be more expressive and vulnerable within reason. I don't think it's an either or proposition. We could be masculine and we can be expressive in parallel. You can look back at footage of a guy like MMA fighter Daniel Cormier, who was brought to tears after losing a match to John Jones a few years back. A guy not a lot of men want to see in hand-to-hand combat because they'll get fucked up. Next Super Bowl, take a look at the losing team's sidelines. There are going to be some waterworks from men who, unlike most of us, suffer the trauma equivalent of enduring a 35-mile-per-hour car accident each game. And I get the whole dynamic of not necessarily having the luxury of showing emotional vulnerability in something like warfare. But this is a different time. Most of us men will never see warfare. So that type of emotional suppression isn't necessarily needed. The next thing, I really want to touch on is that I want men to realize that they don't have to needlessly put their health at risk for the sake of dumb macho posturing, like not wearing a mask during this pandemic, or perhaps needlessly getting your ass beat by 3 guys because you don't want to look like a punk. Part of being a man is acknowledging responsibility and maximizing on your intelligence, however smart you are. Nobody in their right mind is going to pass by your bed in the ICU and declare, look, there lies a man who defied mask wearing, or some guy who picked a fight with 3 guys that outweighed him by about 100 pounds because he ain't no punk. Having said that, there is value in taking on challenges that will actually advance your emotional and your physical skill level. So like maybe set a goal to get 15 or 20 pounds stronger in your workout, or take a boxing or a grappling class and fight somebody who's more advanced, who's going to challenge you, yet not knock you into a different solar system. Or learn a skill that you're weak at. Take your pick. Part of being a man is also taking responsibility for your fuck-ups, doing wrong by people, and then saying, look, I was wrong. How do I make this right with you? Many years ago, I was that dude, and as a much younger man, I had an embarrassing run-in with a guy in a retail space because it was based on something my girlfriend at the time said. I ended up confronting the guy, I threatened him, but when my girlfriend and I got back home, it dawned on me that my girl exaggerated her interaction with him. So what did I have to do? Well, I got back in my car, I drove to the store, and I had to apologize to the guy for being an asshole. And the taste of eating crow in that circumstance, it fucking sucks. But it had to be done because I couldn't live with myself otherwise. Manhood is also knowing how to, tastefully back out of a commitment you can't live up to, but before or during such. We all like playing hero as men. We all like playing white knight sometimes, but be careful of that. You may accept the challenge and realize like, look, hey, I'm sorry, I'm in over my head on this one. Or perhaps this is not what I thought it would be. Then telling the other party, look, I apologize, but this is something I overcommitted on, versus, pulling the shit that some people do and just having a disappearing act or making excuses while the other party is waiting for you to deliver on something that you promised them. And look, man, like at the end of the day, you, the man, decides what manhood looks like to you for your life. I've given my perspective on it because I largely feel like I live a life I'm proud of. I don't oversell or overcommit. And at the same time, I challenge myself in ways that advances me. No man or woman can convince me otherwise, because in practice, I have a pretty clear vision of how I will sustain that for the rest of my life, regardless of my economic status, regardless of me being a black man or any other category you want to put it in. People may judge exactly how your manhood stands in comparison to others, but the opinion that matters most is yours and how you feel about yourself. But remember this, there are different ways to broadcast your manhood. You don't need to scream to the heavens how much of a manly man you are. You don't need to have the physical stature of a LeBron James or The Rock. That shit helps, but that is what they look like rather, or versus who they actually are. Character is action. You can exude manhood in silence, in protest, academically, or even through comedy. It really depends on your situation from a personal standpoint. The emotional benefit, as I see it, is having peace of mind and confidence and self-awareness. So reflect on your own situation and decide what is an appropriate definition of what manhood means for you. And if you are retooling or recalibrating, remember that it's a process. Maybe you're at a stage of life where, the length of that journey isn't very clear, but hey, you got to trust yourself and be patient with the transformation and be patient with the process. As corny as it may sound, man, manhood is a lifelong endeavor. It's not some destination.